Hey,
Hey, well, I
there
don't
you are.
not letting me
Yeah, that's good.
up what I want, but it's not.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know exactly. This is the first time I've done an actual Instagram live, so we'll make it work.
Yeah, I've done it, but not joining in with other people.
Yeah,
So
yeah, this is pretty neat. Be able to just kind of go through it. So, well,
yeah,
thank you for speaking with me for a little while.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep,
So you are Kevin Twit, and you are the founder of Indelible Grace Music, correct?
that is true.
All right, good deal. And tell me about how long ago did that start?
Well, the first record came out in 2000.
Oh
So long,
wow. Okay.
but we
Okay.
were really doing those songs within our college ministry, which was Belmont RUF. I'm a campus minister with RUF at Belmont,
Okay.
and Christ Community Church in the college Sunday school class. We
Okay.
probably been doing that stuff since '95 or so, and
Okay.
working music.
And Belmont, and you are in Nashville, correct?
Nashville, Tennessee. That's right.
Okay.
And I get to
All
teach
right.
technology at Belmont as well.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Um, how is your health doing?
Yeah, right. Thanks for asking. I
Yeah.
had open heart surgery April 15th. Had an aortic aneurysm, and they replaced my aortic valve and sewed up my mitral valve. And yeah, I'm doing much better. I think
Good.
I'm maybe not 100% energy wise
Right.
on the right trajectory. I just finished my last cardiac rehab
Okay.
on Monday. So
Okay. Well, good. Well, we're glad you're doing well, and I've been able to keep up with it on. I believe your wife was sharing through the Indelible Grace page, and so we're
yeah,
glad you're doing well.
it was a cardiac nurse too when we met.
Okay. All right.
So
Well, there.
since that was helpful, and she probably shared more details than I even understand.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, again, thanks for joining us. I'm not gonna keep you too long today, but I just want to kind of do a quick update, kind of what we talked about yesterday. And
Yeah,
we began talking about John Newton. That's kind of where we wanted to start first. Figured Amazing Grace, probably most known hymn. We'll start with John Newton.
right.
Spoke about his life a little bit, about kind of his upbringing and his time kind of in the slave trade and
Yeah,
as a slave himself. I didn't know that. I didn't really realize that until I
yeah.
started looking it up. And then, of course, his life going up to writing Amazing Grace. And really, where we left off was his writing of the Olney hymnal, kind of his time as a pastor.
Yeah.
So, kind of from here, if you could just tell us a little bit about that, kind of the development of that, and what you know about the Olney hymnal.
About the only hymnal. Well, it's pretty cool. Have y'all seen a copy of the book? We showed
I, I don't have one. No, I know that on Amazon there's
one.
an edition.
I thought I would
Okay,
show y'all. This is
nice.
one of my treasures. Here, I'll show you this. The only hymns in three books. I guess it's reversed. I don't know how to fix that.
Oh,
Uh,
it's okay. Yeah.
but this is a what is this? 1795
Oh, wow.
edition. And what I like about it, it has the preface.
Yeah.
Definitely encourage people to read the preface. What Newton, Newton was good friends with a guy named William Cooper, and they both lived there in Olney. Cooper was a poet and hymn writer, very important English poet,
Mhm.
but also struggled with mental illness, depression, maybe we would say manic depression, these.
Right.
Um, anyway, they put together they had lots of dynamics and aspects to their friendship, but writing hymns and also being part of kind of a special meeting outside the normal service where they could sing hymns and have a prayer meeting,
Okay.
things that they were both involved in, and eventually decided that they were going to sit down and put together a thing called the Only Hymns.
Okay.
Those days, the Anglicans didn't officially authorize hymn singing. The
Oh,
author
wow.
for them was the Book of Common Prayer, but they could
Right.
put together this hymn book. There were some other kind of Anglican folks, like the early Methodists, that had kind
Yeah.
of went outside the official rules and were singing
Yeah.
hymns, or other places where that was happening. Um, but people would also read hymns just for devotional reading,
Mhm.
not just to sing them. And
Right.
anyway, so they decided to set on this venture, and they even divvied up who would write on which topics. It's
Okay.
an interesting hymn book. It's not really one that seems so designed for church use. I mean, book one is on select texts of scripture. Book two is on occasional subjects. And then book 3 is on the progress and changes of the spiritual life. So it doesn't have like all the things you would expect in a full hymnal. What probably wouldn't be a hymnal you'd adopt for your church service today.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful resource to read devotionally, and also, for people just to draw hymns from other editors.
Yeah.
Anyway, they start on the project, and John Newton writes about this in the preface. He says a few of the hymns had already been published or had been spread abroad. They've been using them. Sometimes they would get published in a magazine here or there. He also, John Newton's famous for writing letters. Highly encourage anybody to read the letters of John Newton if they never have. And I've got actually an 18th century edition of 26 letters to Omicron, where he attached a few hymns at the end of that. So hymns had gotten out there a little bit before the only hymnal. So they set out to do this project, and then Cooper ended up falling into this debilitating depression and wasn't able to finish his part of the hymnal. And this is why I encourage people to read the preface, because you really get this story in Newton's own words. But he said he was really discouraged and really put the project aside and didn't even want to finish it, because he said the hymnal was designed to be not just a collection of hymns, but a monument to the great friendship God had built between he and William Cooper. And his friend was unable to finish his part. Then he really felt like, I don't even know if I want to finish this. But really he decided to take it up again and finish it. And so, we almost didn't have hymns like Amazing Grace wasn't actually that popular early on.
Really?
Yeah, not one of the more popular ones in the early days. And of course, the form that we sing it in has that, when we've been there 10,000 years, which isn't right. So that's a guy named Steve Turner wrote an entire book on sort of the history and transmission and use of the hymn Amazing Grace, which is pretty interesting. I thought you might also be interested in seeing something else. This is actually an autograph of William Cooper's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
That
what is that on there?
It's on a legal document. He was a law clerk and studied at the bar when he actually kind of had his first nervous breakdown. Yeah. And then his conversion, he came out of that as he went to kind of a hospital where using hymns to help the mentally disturbed which is what they call it in those days.
Right. Yeah.
Was part of their treatment regimen.
Yeah. So with Amazing Grace, I'm not exactly sure. Was that kind of a collaborative between John Newton and William Cooper? Newton
one. Yeah. As a matter of fact, there's a daily devotional on John Newton's kind of writings that you can Day One Publishers over in England. And the lady who's been working on that, if I try and get her name off the top of my head, I'm going to forget it. Marjorie, I think, maybe one of the people watching knows. Anyway, she's done some great research in unpublished archives of John Newton's and discovered that he actually wrote Amazing Grace for a New Year's Day sermon on 1 Chronicles 17, which is where David wants to build the temple, and the prophet's like, go for it. And then God says, hold on. I didn't ask you to build me a house. I don't want a house until the house of David, there's a wordplay there in the Hebrew, is established.
Right.
The idea of God putting his people first, which is, I guess, in many ways, the heart of the gospel. Yeah. And then great prayer, in there. And that's what the hymn is based on. So it's not really just about his conversion. As a matter of fact, he actually continued in the slave trade for a while after his.
Did he really?
Like the guy that took tariffs at the seaport. It took a while for the dots to connect, it seems, for him. So it's not like a of, he's out, he's on, on the ship, he's miserable, and there's a storm, and then he gets writes his hymn. It's not true at all. That a lot of apocryphal hymn stories. But eventually, so he really writes it for a New Year's Day sermon, and we have the notes from that sermon. He includes some of that in that daily devotional on John Newton's writings. So she's been
interesting.
Great stories about and background info on some of the hymns.
Well, speaking of his background and those two, his profession and writing these hymns kind of overlapping, kind of in the climate that we're in. How would you say, just kind of off the top of your head, should believers handle that type of thought of hey, the guy who wrote Amazing Grace was also heavily involved in the slave trade as he wrote it. How do we kind of go about that
Yeah.
in
Well,
worship?
no, it wasn't as he wrote it.
Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
think, but the point is, he didn't write it right when he got converted, and it
Okay.
doesn't seem like it was just about his own conversion. You
Okay.
know, as a reflection on that text for New Year's Day, because what he would do on he would have a New Year's service every year. That was a special service he did it only,
Okay.
and they would basically like look back over the Lord's grace in the preceding year, and then our basis for hope going forward. And of course, the hope is the covenant and God's covenant promises.
Okay.
So,
Was that normal back in that time? Was it kind of the common thing for pastors to write the hymns and the hymnals within their own church?
I wouldn't say common, but probably more common than today for sure.
Yeah.
People studied poetry. They wrote poetry in school. There were numerous, pastors who wrote hymns devotionally, maybe used it some. I mean, certainly the early use of hymns in the English language was mostly by pastors writing for their own congregation. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah, because I knew, like Spurgeon, I knew he wrote his own
he did.
hymnal for his
Yeah.
congregation.
So he didn't put very many of his in his hymn book at all, actually.
Oh, really?
He put
Okay.
more in the Sword and Trowel magazine.
Okay.
The only ones he put in our own hymn book were the ones where he couldn't find a version of the psalm that to fill out the psalm. So he was kind of, even though he did write them. But yeah, a lot of people, Horatius Bonar. I mean, I tell people, like, what's amazing is I think in our day and age, people have separated pastor and worship. And, there's a long history of pastors curating the songs their people would sing. They thought that was a pastoral function,
Right.
even if they didn't necessarily write them. So many people, put together hymn books that people don't know about.
Yeah.
I find, like Jason.
Yeah, and it's not an easy thing to necessarily find either. You can't just do a quick Amazon search a lot of the times and, hey, here's a hymnal from the 1800s,
Yeah, but you know what? The thing about Amazon is all those print-on-demand books.
Yeah.
So you can get a print-on-demand copy of the Only Hymns. Actually, let me show you this one more thing. You can get a facsimile of the very first edition of the Only Hymns.
Oh, well.
Get this from the Cooper Newton Museum.
Okay.
So and preface, it has all the cool old spelling.
Yeah.
So if you want a copy of the Only Hymns, now this one, I will say the binding, sometimes you got to be careful. You don't want to open this one flat.
Yeah.
I feel like break, but it's still, great little thing to have.
Yeah.
And they have a museum. I've never been to the museum, but I have like this cool old guide to the museum.
Okay. All right.
On Instagram.
Cool. Really?
Matter of fact, I sent them that Cooper signature that I have, and they told me that it was indeed his signature.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very interactive, with people. They love anybody that loves the Only Hymns and wants to do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Let me ask this real quick. So, overall, what would you say the impact of the Only Hymnal has had on not necessarily hymns today, but just over time? What kind of impact do you think it's had?
I think it's had tremendous on us, but even, there's something about, right? In my work with college students, I really have that helped students understand that the normal Christian life is not rah-rah all the time.
Yeah.
And of course, if we sing the Psalms, then we would understand that. But the thing is, a lot of young people aren't singing the Psalms. They're singing a lot of modern songs that are not really fully honest about what the Christian life normally feels like.
Right.
So, the Only Hymns really go to those places, especially William Cooper, those hard places. And, John, the Wesleyans, the Charles Wesley, he didn't really write lament hymns, probably because doctrine of Christian perfectionism is what some of Isaac Watts doesn't do all 150 of the Psalms because he thought some of them, literally says they were too Jewish and he couldn't get Christian joy into them. So he doesn't do it like of Psalm 88. So I think the Only Hymns really, kind of help us, get some of those. I think there's just a robustness to Newton. I mean, I love Amazing Grace, but I really like Let Us Love and Sing and Wonder more.
Okay.
It's maybe one of the greatest in the English language. It would certainly be in my top 3 or 4.
Okay. And now
And
there is a fountain? Is that in Only Hymnal?
yep, that's
Okay.
Cooper wrote that one. What's interesting about the Only Hymns is you can tell the ones that Newton writes because he writes like a preacher,
Yeah.
and you can tell the ones Cooper writes because he writes as a struggler in the pew, and
Yeah.
more reflective. There's more expressions of I'm struggling with this, and I think that's actually a really great balance.
Yeah.
When you read it devotionally, like you get both of those, the truth preached at you, but also the empathy of one who's struggling to believe it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Any word of advice for anybody, or any encouragement trying to keep hymns alive and well? And I know that we have many movements. I know Sing Conference was just this past week.
Yeah.
So there obviously all that's going on, but maybe for someone who really wants to keep that going alive and well in their church and their devotional life,
Yeah.
any direction or any advice you got there?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's part of the work of Indelible Grace Music is, trying to kind of reintroduce some of these old hymn texts that have fallen out of use.
Right.
So like something like the Only Hymnal, so you don't just have the 10 John Newton hymns that still are sung in a lot of churches,
Right.
but you find others that maybe had dropped out of use that are worth singing either with a traditional tune or putting a tune to them. I encourage people to read hymn books devotionally. Honestly, eBay is a great resource for hymnals that are antiquarian that you often get $30-40. You can get a cool leather-bound hymnal.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool. We have a website, Indelible Grace Hymn Book. You can just Google that, where you can get charts and PowerPoint slides and even sheet.
Yeah, I saw that you had found one at a Goodwill the other day. Is that right?
Oh, I did. I know. Yeah. It was fine. It's fine. If somebody was just not using it, I'd rather have it back and give it to somebody that wants.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
The cost definitely helps.
And they cost a lot more than that to make.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I was happy to have another one back again.
Yeah. Well, anything you guys got coming up? Any new album? Anything like that?
Not necessarily. Well, Sandra McCracken, who's been involved with Indelible Grace, has a book coming out.
She does. Yeah.
And it's awesome. And so she has a book release live stream I saw coming up in a couple weeks, or is it next week on a Tuesday?
I think it's pretty soon. I think maybe next week.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to go because Tuesday night is when I preach at RUF.
Okay.
Watch the live stream afterwards. So that's going on. Maybe. We also, one thing we did during COVID that people may not know about is we put together a video curriculum on the gospel and hymns. So there's like 10 lessons. You can get it from teachable.com, or I think there's a link in the Indelible Grace Instagram bio in the link tree. But that's, a thing where my son and I will perform the hymn, and then I'll talk about 20 minutes about the background of the hymn and some gospel nuggets, and then there's small group questions. So some people enjoy that as a way to get into or a Sunday school class or something. That's kind of
sounds good. Well, Kevin, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing all that with us. And and for all you who are watching and going to be watching in the future, just check out Indelible Grace Music and see what all they got. Ryman album is still one I listen to all the time. It's a great album.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Lord blessing on this new venture.
Yes, sir. Thank you.